Do you know what running can do in the darkest of places? It can keep someone alive. Now, every runner listening to this has had days where the excuses were loud. I'm too tired. I'm too busy. I'm too broken. But today's story starts somewhere excuses don't matter. Because comfort, it doesn't exist. Inside prison walls, a place built to strip away freedom, identity, and choice, running still found a way in. One man ran in circles, literally, lap after lap, fence after fence, until running stopped being training and became survival. And one woman, a runner herself, did something rare. She looked at an incarcerated man and saw a human worth investing in, not a label worth ignoring. Now, this episode isn't about politics. It's not a feel-good headline. And it's not really even about a marathon. It's about what happens when the human spirit is given one healthy outlet and one person has the courage to say yes. Cue that intro music.
Who says you need to fly to reach the top? Keep beating your block till your feet are hot. Get your head out the sand, join the flock. It's okay to run scared, we enjoy the lie.
Welcome back to the Ostrich Running Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Meraz, and with me, as always, Jarrett the Juice Horton. If you're listening to this on a run, I want you to stay with me for a second. Running has this way of stripping things down. When you're tired enough, hungry enough, far enough from the car, you stop pretending. Now, today's conversation, it lives in that place. You're going to hear about prison, about addiction, about suffering, about recovery that doesn't necessarily move in straight lines. But this is not a story about crime, and it's definitely not a story about politics. It's a story about what happens when one person decides to move their body forward and another person decides not to look away. Casey Vanderhoef found running in a place designed to remove hope, and Katy saw running as a bridge, not a barrier, and helped make something happen that on paper probably shouldn't have. Now, there's no villains in this conversation. There are no saviors either. Just humans doing hard things, sometimes quietly, and choosing growth over comfort. Now, with some technical issues, we lost the introduction for Utah State Representative Katy, but let me give you a brief introduction. She's a nurse, a wife, a mom, a grandmother, and a state legislator, and 12-time Ironman triathlete. She has a passion for health, fitness, and doing hard things to challenge herself both physically and mentally. Now let's take on the interview with the introduction of Casey.
Yeah, my name is Casey Vanderhoef. I am the founder from the Fit From Within running program at the Utah State Correctional Facility, which is a prison inside the Utah Department of Corrections.
Look, I've tried every electrolyte product out there, the super sugary ones, the ones with the gimmick salt, the tablets that take forever to dissolve. On a lot of these, they mess my stomach up. But Ostrich Salt, it's different. Simple. Just pure electrolytes, sodium, potassium, and magnesium malate in the ratio your body actually needs when you're sweating through mile 30, 50, or 80. I created this because I needed it. When I was out at Kodiak 100 running through the night, cramping was not an option. When you're managing 100 miles, you can't afford to bonk because your electrolytes are off. So I made something that works. No artificial flavors, no BS, just quality ingredients. And here's the thing, whether you're running ultras or you're just trying to get through a hot 10K without cramping, your body needs electrolytes. That's not negotiable. Now head to ostrichrunning.com and grab some electrolytes today. Use code SALTY6 to try your own 6-pack for $6 because you can't run scared if you're sitting on the side of the trail with cramps. All right. It's so awesome to meet you guys. I'm going to direct this first question over to you, Casey. Before prison, before running, who were you when the world felt like it was the most out of control for you?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So my story really started when I was a freshman in college. I was a walk-on football player at the University of Nebraska in 1996, which was a dream for me. I worked so hard as a high-level athlete to get that opportunity. And that my freshman year was when I first started abusing prescription medication. And I really started living this double life because from the very first scripts, there was something about the meds that made me just finally feel the way I thought I always wanted to feel. And so I began abusing them immediately, began lying to doctors. And I started lying about it. So for my public facing identity, I was very successful. Football was awesome. I was part of the 1997 national championship team that won the Orange Bowl against the University of Tennessee and Peyton Manning.
I saw that. I looked it up. Wow. Yeah. When you'd had your question, and I was like, wait, what game was that? I was like, I think I know that game.
Yeah.
So cool.
And behind the scenes, I was using for everything. I was using to go to practice. I was using to go to school. I was using to go to sleep. I was using to wake up. I was lying to doctors. I was lying to multiple doctors. And at the end of the 4 years, I just felt the first part of me starting to break. I failed to graduate. I had a failed marriage. And I just maybe thought if I could just stay a little bit far enough ahead of my consequences, I could pull myself out of it. So I moved home. My parents lived in the Salt Lake City, Utah area. Okay. And some really good things started happening for me, again, for my public-facing self. I met a wonderful girl named Christy, who I'm still married to today, 22 years later. Yeah. I started succeeding professionally in the restaurant industry, which I loved. And my addiction got worse. I went from lying to doctors to lying to multiple doctors, which wasn't new territory for me, but they were new doctors. And then I started adjusting the prescriptions as well. And because it was prescription meds, I was able to function somewhat. I was successful in business. I opened my own restaurant, but I was slowly burning things to the ground. And as things kind of progressed that way, I started feeling more broken inside. I started getting good things in life, like we started having children. And I started to really hate myself because those really good things in life that I adored and I loved weren't enough for me not to use. I ended up going
actually relate to that a lot because, during my active addiction too, right? My son was born, and I talk to my wife often about this. I felt so guilty, right? Where I've heard the stories of, a father, right, crying at the sight of their newborn. My life has changed completely. I'm going to do this and that. And I told her, I feel like terrible saying this, but like, why didn't I feel changed in that moment? Like where I felt like this epiphany, like I should have, right? When my son was born. I mean, now I look back at it with a clear mind and, see how grateful I am. But something about being in that active addiction, it just takes away from life's moments, right? And pulls away from those special things because you're so disconnected, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah.
So So life progressed that way. I moved to South Texas, to the University of Houston for grad school. And it just got worse. As I started making more money, I started spending more money on my addiction. Eventually I started getting in trouble. I started picking up misdemeanors. It was a very stressful way to live. I was lying to doctors. I was trying to tell if pharmacists were going to give me the prescription or call the cops. And so then in my addict mind, I just thought maybe it's less illegal if I switch to meth. And at that point, I could not function at all. Like my life burned to the ground quick. I ended up going to prison in Texas and serving 3 years on a 5. And I was so ashamed and I was so embarrassed about, really all of the potential and privilege I'd wasted in my life. I didn't do anything in prison in Texas except hate myself and be embarrassed and ashamed and have my wife not bring my children to come visit me because I was so ashamed of where I was. And so when I got out, I'd hoped that just the fear of going back to prison would be enough to keep me clean. Yeah. And then for a while it was. But then COVID hit in 2020 and I completely fell apart because I had no foundation to stand on because I hadn't done any real work. My absolute bottom came during my relapse during COVID, when at the time my oldest daughter was 12. she's 17 now. She had been saving money for a guitar. She'd been saving quarters and $1 bills and doing jobs around the house and trying to bribe her siblings. And I stole that money to buy meth. And it was such a complete, like, I felt like my soul completely broke in that moment. And two things happened. The first one was, I was ready to commit suicide, but then the second thing happened, which was gratefully I was arrested.
Just before you decided to make that permanent decision?
It happened, I tried to do an intentional overdose, which failed. And so I was trying to think of another way to do it when I was arrested. And I'm really grateful for that because it absolutely saved my life. And so I went to prison in Utah, with, a different type of willingness, because at that point, I felt like I had made the decision to live and I could not exist in the current state that I was existing in. And I knew it did not matter how much education I had, I wasn't smart enough to outthink my problem. It didn't matter how much I loved my family, like that wasn't enough for me to solve my problem. So I had to find the answers. And it was at that moment that I think that willingness brought an intention with it.
Yeah. Are there recovery programs in the prison like AANA and things like that?
Yeah. So I tell you what, I threw myself into everything. Like, I threw myself into life skill classes, but I ended up going to another facility at first in Utah called, the Central Utah Correctional Facility. It's in Gunnison. It's in a little farming community. But there, it was the first time where I really decided to get honest with a therapist. And just really talk about the underlying issues of my addiction. Things that if I would have been honest about when I was 18, I probably could have avoided a lot of the pain of my consequences in life.
It's funny, it's crazy when you think back of that, right? The moments that you had probably opportunities to change a path, right? And I had another guest on the show, one of my pacers, actually. He's an Ironman and he helped me pace on this 100-mile. And I asked him the question, if you could go back to your younger self, right, what would you tell them, to change something in your life? And he said, not a thing. He's like, if I didn't go through this pain, right, if I didn't go through all of this stuff, I wouldn't be where I'm at this moment, right? All of these things happen for a reason, right? And if I go and I take away that struggle and that pain for my younger self, I take away from my present self of who I am. And I thought that was so powerful, right? So like, looking at it from an aspect of like, man, I should have just done it there. I should have done it at this point, right? Like, no, it was all, on God's plan, on God's time, not to be, overly religious, but, it's definitely true, right? It's on a plan that was meant to be, right? And, I think you're just on that plan. So you get into this prison, you're going to therapy, you're bringing up the 18-year-old mindset. And what do you learn?
Yeah, so I learned a couple of things. Number one, I couldn't, with all the stuff that was coming up as I was practicing on working through the shame and trying to get to a place of self-acceptance, I could not sit still inside my jail cell and sleep all day. And so I went out to the yard and I started running, and I was so out of shape. The constant drug use, the binging, I was so out of shape, and I couldn't run very far. But something inside me felt fed when I was running. And so, at first I could only run for half an hour, and then I would just be gasping. But there was an older inmate that ran every day. And so I just started tagging along with him. Didn't know him, didn't really talk to him at first. Just started having, there's something about our humanity that when we're running next to somebody else, like we just sync, right?
Yep.
And he was a gentleman that he suffered from an eye condition called macular degeneration. Oh, I didn't know anything about it. So I just asked him one time if it hurt. And he explained to me that when he runs, he can't see what's in front of him. He can only see like what's on the horizon. So when he runs, he can't see the fences. He could only see the mountains. So when he ran, he didn't feel like he was incarcerated. And that smacked me really hard. And I thought, man, I don't know what it is right now. I don't know if running is helping me like physically like get more fit, which it was. So I was sleeping better, things like that. But it was also doing something to me mentally, because as I was doing this hard work, in the prison with therapy, and I was doing a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, and I was going back to church, and I was trying to, start having very hard conversations with my wife, and repairing that relationship and my children. I knew that something like running was supporting me somehow, because every time I thought I just came to a place that I couldn't walk through, I would go run. And at the end of that run, I felt like I just had a little bit more strength to carry on. And so I did that for a year. I just kept at daily going out there and grinding. And sometimes I'm like, man, maybe I'm just burning my sins away when I'm suffering out here. I don't know, but I just felt better.
Sweating them out, right?
Yeah. And so I started to feel a spark. I started to feel a spark inside, a spark of hope, a spark of like acceptance, a spark of an actualization that, maybe I do have something left to give. And it wasn't a spark that was bright enough to feel what came later, but it was enough to start. And so it was enough to like kind of get me off the mat, to help me reconnect with the people I care about, to own my story, right? To own the mistakes that I made.
No, for sure. Yeah, and being in those quiet moments, right, is such a reflective state, because I empathize with you greatly, because when I got sober, I'm going through therapy. We're going through couples counseling, because my wife still stuck around me, even like through all of this stuff, right? And I'm going to meetings. I was back in school. I was doing all of these things to better my mental health, right? But when I started running is when I felt like I could finally process all the processing, right? Even though, these things are a tool to help you process, I felt overwhelmed at times, and I just needed some sort of silence. And I even tell the story to my wife, like at some points it felt like I was flogging myself, right? I'm like, this self-inflicted pain is just like helped me like get past like, telling these stories of the things that I did and during my active addiction, the things that I witnessed during the military time. It was like I flogged it out of me. Like the pain of it was so fresh because I was addressing it all so often on a daily basis that I don't think if I didn't have running, I would have broken down, man. I would have broken down completely. Like I needed to go to bed exhausted at night, because if I didn't, my mind was racing and I'm waking up night terrors, or, just everything was just going to consume me, that I was trying to release, that all of that pressure that had built up for, over almost 15 years, right? It just needed to come out somewhere, and running was definitely that like pressure release valve. And that's where I fell in love with it for sure. So do you remember where you actually had the realization that running was helping? Was it, in the middle of a run? Was it laying in your rack, or like in your cell at night when you're like, this is working?
Yeah. So I remember the moment when I got to the point where I could run for as long as they would allow us to be out, right? I got to the point where about 2 hours. So I could go for about 2 hours. And I remember one day, it was a summer, it was hot, I was sweating, I was hurting, it felt wonderful. And I just thought, I don't hate myself anymore. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't happy. I didn't like where I was. But I just didn't hate myself anymore. You know what I mean? And in some ways it was such a hard moment. It was a hard moment because, I didn't like that was a new experience for me. Like, you know what I mean? Like that is new.
Yeah.
And so I think that,
that's crazy.
I knew that, something was happening from a health standpoint for me mentally, because I wasn't taking any antidepressants. Not there's anything wrong with taking antidepressants, but I wasn't, and I didn't need to, because I was okay with me. And that, I think that is what really, kind of took my spark of hope, into real faith, that I am capable of love, right? I am capable of loving myself. I can, allow my wife to love me, because before that math never worked, right? Like I couldn't understand how my wife could love me more than I hated myself. You know what I mean? And the same thing in my
That
relationship
makes
with God. I just didn't like, I didn't believe it because I couldn't understand it. And I think, as I had kind of gotten at the end of that year and I'd done the work and I was, I had this really, healthy habit of running that kind of helped me process everything. After doing some more, reading and understanding about the mental health benefits of running, I now look back and understand it. But at the time I just thought, man, like I'm not going to get caught up in trying to question it. I'm just going to keep going with it because I like who I am right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you feel that good, why question it? You're like, let's just keep rolling with it.
Yeah,
did you make a decision much like I did, right? They wanted to give me all kinds of medication, right? But, being sober, I'm like, I'm not doing anything to, mess with my sobriety. And again, I'm not knocking, much like you, like antidepressants or anything like that. But I had made a conscious decision. I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I'm doing this completely natural and sober. Like I am not putting anything else in my body. We're going to suffer through this. Right. And, it's going to be a grind. Right. And in those early like sobriety days, you kind of are curious if you're still you, right? Like you don't even know who you is, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, you're just really dating yourself in this moment. You're like trying to find out, you're like, have I always been this weirdo or, exciting, personable person? Or is this a facade? Is it imposter syndrome? What is this like? So I think, I definitely had found some spiritual moments in running and I still do in certain races. Right. And it doesn't cease to amaze me, like this connection on a spiritual level that running has brought. And we had another guest on who talked about, the aha moment. There was a book like that talks about the aha moment, right? And, where something clicks in you when you're pushing through like physical activity, right? And a clarity kind of takes over. Some people will call it, like a Zen state. Some people will call it the presence of God, whatever it is that you support and you're into, that happens, right? And there's, the people who talk about it in a scientific biological makeup of this is the reason why, right? Whatever it is, you get this feeling that is like so incredible that you've never really found anywhere else, sometimes only in certain drugs. But I talk about like a runner's high being so real, and not like something that it could definitely be something that you seek as an addiction. And I will say that out loud, right? We can see running becoming an addiction, but there is this euphoric feeling in a great sense that you've pushed yourself to a period of growth and beyond like some sort of suffering, right? I kind of want to paint a picture for the listeners, if we don't mind, like when you first stepped out onto that track, can you tell us what it looked like? What was it big? Was it small? Was it fenced in? Did you have a view? What was that like?
Yeah. So when I first started running, I was running at the facility in Gunnison, and it was a big rec yard with absolutely no paving. It was just dirt, and it was like it was dry dirt because in the winter it's mud, and in the summer the mud dries, so you have like footprints dried, So every once in a while you'd step on a ridge of mud, just like shooting pain would go through your forefoot.
You're a trail runner. Nice.
Yeah, a forest trail runner. And I just, I was a really high level athlete at one time, and similar to what you mentioned, 16 years of my active addiction, I did not know where the drugs ended and I began. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because I used so much during my athletic career, I didn't know, again, where I existed in all of this.
Yeah.
And I remember having that moment when I very first started thinking, it's time to find out. Like, it's time to find out where I do exist in this. And like you just talked about, the thing I love about distance running, like those long 2-hour, 3-hour grinds, is I get to a point where I get to show my body that my mind and my spirit are in charge. And that's important for me, because for most of my adult life, my physical cravings are what drove my mental and spiritual decline, by reacting to cravings or compulsions, or addictions. And so that does become a very spiritual moment for me when I get to that point where my body is just like, done, right? And that's time for me to really identify where I exist and saying, okay, let's keep going, you know? So,
yeah. I talk about that a lot. Like, who are the person that you're trying to be, and, you know, going and look, a marathon's far and it's an incredible feat. And I, you know, pushing any distance to me is an incredible feat. But if you ever have an opportunity physically to go beyond, to go, you know, like a 50, 100, oh Lord.
Yeah.
I was running some marathons, and I was running, you know, some 50s, and this last 100 that I finished, we were at, I believe, mile 78, and it was my pacer, and we're just running, and I was in so much pain. I don't even know how I was moving. Right.
Heck
and
yeah.
I remember just like looking at my friend, and we kind of like hit this moment, and we're like, do you feel that? And I was like, is that like God with us right now? Is this, you know, and I never have been this person to talk openly like this. Right. I'm spiritual in my quiet self. Right. But I like turned to him like, I feel like there's God with us right now, and he is taking control of this, because there's no other explanation beyond the physical pain that I was feeling, the mental breakdown that I was done. Like, I felt like I didn't even have any control at that point. The only thing was a power beyond myself, right, that was carrying my legs, and they felt fresh for those, you know, 10, 15 miles until they started hurting again. But at least for that like 10, 15 miles, it was like, what is happening? Somebody has lifted me up on their shoulders and is giving me the strength to feel like my legs are on the first 10 miles of this race. And you know, it was just, it's crazy. And I love that. You know, so you described the track, what it kind of feels like from that other one. And, you know, that was that first facility. You go to your more recent one. What was that track like?
Yeah. So, you know, I really went, so about 2 years had passed when I got transferred to the brand new $1 billion, you know, Utah State Correctional Facility in Salt Lake. Yeah. So really I had transformed as a person, you know, because of the work I'd done, because of the way my relationships had healed. You know, I was reading a book every night. I was reading from a book every night with each of my 4 children. You know, we had a book that each of us read on the phone. So like I was, you know, I felt like, things were healing. And so, I started thinking about, you know, they talk about in recovery how when you get clean, dreams that had died long ago, you know, come back to life, right? Or reemerge. And so, I'm a passionate entrepreneur, and I just started thinking, you know, in my shame, I'd kind of settled into, well, I'd just blown it, right? I'd blown the privilege. I'd blown the opportunities. This is who I am now. And now I'm just going to exist this way until I die. But those old dreams, you know, started coming back to life of, you know, of just starting things that I could be proud of, things that added value to the world, you know, things that created joy for people. And I thought, again, just like how I had to step onto that track and say, hey, it's time to see, right? This is time to find out. I thought, 2 things happened. I pulled into Salt Lake, and it's just beautiful tracks, right? Beautiful paved, like manicured grass. I just thought, oh my gosh, that's gonna be amazing.
And we're talking about prison right now.
Yeah, we're talking about prison, absolutely. But after running in Gunnison on just this dirt, like trying to remember where to step in the winter so the mud doesn't, you know. I was just so excited, and I was in shape at that point. And I watched a documentary, 26.2 to Life, about the San Quentin Prison Running Club in California, and I thought, this is my opportunity to start something. You know, let me start something and see if I still have it in me, or if, again, what that was the drugs, right? If that was, and so I know I was running on the track. I felt amazing, felt motivated. I was, you know, I that when I have been in the act of doing something incredibly positive with my life and engaging in a healthy behavior that leads to change, I usually attract other like-minded people, you know, people that are like, hey, look, I've been wanting to do this for a while. Can I run with you? Right. So I had a pretty good group of about 20 guys that were running with me. And so I started putting a proposal together, reached out to San Quentin, asked how they did it. And so it took a little while.
How did you get that information? Like, do you just access in the internet and you're able to find people who were in charge, or did you have to reach out to somebody within Utah corrections facility who maybe knew somebody over there? What was that like?
Yeah. So that was a process. First of all, my poor sweet wife, right? Like my poor sweet, very busy, trying to handle 4 kids and a full-time job with an incarcerated husband, and then I would be like, hey, will you look this up for me while I'm on the phone with her, right? And most of the time she's like, yes, I will.
Yeah.
Sometimes she was like, no, this is not a good day to ask for things. But before the documentary went on PBS, I watched the director interviewed, and they showed a lot of clips from it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had her research the documentary at that point, and she was emailing the producers, and we were like, look, we're in Utah. We want to start one too. What do we do? How do we get in touch with people? And so we were able just to get a little bit of periphery information. When the running club hit its second year and the prison had some of the therapists from our Health and Human Services, Katy talked about Annie and Ellie. They're the ones that really were able to make some phone calls for me. And then San Quentin sent us a printout of their lap counting sheets, their schedule, their calendar.
Wow.
And so we were really able to get traction during our second year. My first year, I just had a rough framework, and so I kind of filled in the gaps. And then the second year, when we were able to get another like data dump from San Quentin, because at that point there'd been some other prisons that had also followed their model that my wife had found online, So that first year we had 2 goals. We had a goal to get to a marathon in November and to run 1,000 miles and just celebrate milestones along the way with like 100 miles, 250 miles.
And San Quentin was a 1,000-mile run club as well too, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So that was kind of like the baseline of that, just figuring, okay, yeah, we could do this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so initially I wanted to do it with volunteers because that's how San Quentin's is set up.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, we had a lot of really well-meaning, interested people, but I just couldn't get anybody that could either get through the security clearance or just, so I just ended up doing it myself the first year, just, getting guys out, trying to coach guys while I was running myself, so I would usually do my first hour run with because at that point everybody was new. So I would do my first hour run with half the new guys, and I'd kind of run my second hour by myself, do my third hour with the rest of the new guys. So that first year was kind of it was us learning. It was us finding a way to be the least amount of inconvenient for the guards, because again, we had to go from our housing building, and it wasn't a long walk, but they had to go outside of the track. And so with where Salt Lake the prison is at, there's a lot of mosquitoes. So the summer, the guards again subject themselves to mosquitoes. In the winter, it's cold, and crazy runners, we don't care, whatever. But for these guys, it was very kind of them to do. So we were trying to figure it out during the first year. We had 30 guys. Only 2 of us made it to the end of November for the marathon because a lot of the guys were running for the first time, and 10 months wasn't enough for them to be ready for the marathon. But
I mean,
that's kind of
10 months on a 2-hour window training block, is tough, and I'm sure like a slew of other things, right? With shoes, fueling, things like that. That takes a lot of toll on the body, right? And for you to be able to sustain that is crazy. So, I believe that's about the time that you ended up meeting Katy, correct?
Yeah, so at the end of that first year, the other guy besides me that did the marathon got paroled. And so I kind of thought, well, that's
Back
kind of
one.
that. And, my experience with running continued to grow as far as the mental health aspect goes. And I kind of, and the other thing was I was trying to prove to myself that I was still a guy that could start something, right?
Yeah.
If I can start a running club, I can start a company kind of idea. Like that was kind of the deal I was making with myself and with God.
Yeah.
And so I kind of thought, well, look, I made a lot of new friends. I made the friends I already had do the thing I like to do with me. Maybe that has just run its course. I was happy with everybody that started, like, had physically gotten in better shape, right? And was mentally becoming healthier. So I felt like, okay, it served a purpose, and maybe that's it. I guess I'll just continue to do this on my own. And that is when Representative Katy Hall entered my life. And I'll really, again, the timeliness of, just like the timeliness of God and the way he has sent people into my life is something that I'll never understand and I'll forever be grateful for. Because I wouldn't have known to even pray to ask for someone like Katy to enter my life when she did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so as I look back, I'm just like, geez, like how lucky am I, right?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know what to do, right? Like this was still vision for me. I was still living in vision of having this running club. And I didn't know like how to go to the next step because it was just the only place I was allowed to have it was my little housing unit that only housed about 300 men. And we were still in a huge facility that housed, a couple thousand. So, so that's when Katy Hall showed up.
Well, that's a perfect segue for you, Katy. We spend so much time tracking pace, distance, heart rate, and all these external metrics, but we don't track the thing that actually matters most, how we're moving. Alethea is a sensor that clips to your waistband and tracks the force your body experiences when you run. Not just you're running 8-minute miles, but how your body is actually absorbing impact, whether you're braking too much, whether one leg is doing more work than the other. They call it a force portrait. And when I first saw mine, it was like, damn, this is what's actually happening when I run. This is where I'm inefficient. This is where I'm setting myself up for injury. And here's why this matters. Most running injuries don't just happen. They build over time because of the imbalances and inefficiencies we can't see. You're overstriding. You're landing too hard on one side. Your form is breaking down in ways you don't notice until something hurts. Alethea catches that before it becomes a problem. You get personalized feedback after every run. It tells you exactly what to work on, not generic advice, but your specific issues based on your unique biomechanics. I'm not saying this lightly. If you're serious about running long term, this is the tool you need because staying healthy is how you keep showing up. Head to alethea.run and use promo code RUNSCARED10 today. So, Katy, before Casey, before this marathon, what did running already mean to you in your own life? So before all of this, what's your experience with running and how did it help you?
Oh, yeah, thanks. I've always been kind of just from high school and stuff, kind of athletic, but never really, like I didn't run track in school. I played basketball, tennis, and soccer, just kind of did those things. But yeah, but as you get awesome,
we still challenge each other on Sundays.
Awesome. But as you get older and you start having kids and, you're trying to get back in shape, I was like, I'm going to start running. And so found some friends to run with and just, would do a little bit here and there. I started doing some triathlons at like 34, just the sprint. But they were all short distance. And I never thought I would ever do an Ironman. That was like a pipe dream. I thought it was so cool to see those athletes doing that. And then when I got to be a little older and my kids were all grown, I was like, I have more time on my hands now. I want to see how far I can push it. And so I did my first Ironman when I was 45.
Oh, wow.
And then the next year I was like, I'm going to only do one, right? I told my husband the whole time I was running, don't let me sign up for this again. This is horrible. I hate this. This was a bad idea. Why am I doing this? And then the next year, my brother-in-law wanted to do one. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And that next year had some challenges with just one of our kids. And it was my peace. It was my stress relief. It was my saving grace, just having something to get out all that stress, all of those anxieties. And I started to realize how much that helped my mental health. Doing that kind of a distance is a little bit of a sickness. It's a little twisted, but it for me, it was also like setting a goal. You set this goal, even if it's like a 1 mile, and then you do a 5K and you're like, wow, I did that. I could do a 10K. And then a half. Oh, I did that. I did a half. It was hard, but maybe I could push myself to the next level. And that's kind of how how you progress through life. When you get through and you do hard things, you realize that you can do even harder things because you develop that resiliency and that fortitude, right? That you can do hard things, you can suffer and grow, And so that's kind of where my running journey kind of began. And then I don't know. I mean, I'm a nurse. I've got 4 boys. I have 5 grandkids now. But 3 or 4 years ago, I just, the politics of the day, I was like, I'm going to stand up and run for my local state legislative office. I've never run for anything like that before. Never even wanted ever. I'm a nurse. I just deal with people, like interpersonal relations, and trying to help people be calm during their health issues that they're having, but I just got passionate and felt kind of, that I really needed to stand up for some values and things that I was worried about, especially with health and COVID and all the things going on. And so I was like, I'm just going to run. And that year I was training for, it was my 50th birthday that year. And my brother-in-law talked me into doing 5 Ironmans, full Ironmans during our 50th year, because he turned 50 that year too. So I was like, oh, well, this is great. I'm just going to run house to house, delivering flyers saying, vote for me. Like, I didn't send out anything in the mail. I was like, I'm using this as my training.
Running, I'm just going to go ahead and do some campaigning.
Exactly. So I literally would just like have a little bag and carry and run things around to the doors.
I'm Katy Hall, and I'm literally running for
legislature. Right. Exactly. So I ended up winning, and I was like, oh gosh, now I need to do this hard job, And so then I'm doing the legislative thing, and just like Casey, I watched the movie 26.2 to Life, the documentary. I was on an airplane coming back from a legislative conference, and I watched it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Are we doing this in our correctional facility? Because this could help people. This could help people. I know what running's done for me. I know what physical health and that sweating it out and just like leaving it all out there does for my mental health. Why are we not trying to teach people those skills in a place where they could use it? I mean, Casey said it. He was hoping that the fear of not going back to prison would help him not go back to prison. That's not enough sometimes. We have to give people and help people learn skills that can help them deal with the issues that are going on. I know many people who have been helped with addiction through exercise and through using a healthier form of addiction, like we have with exercise and running. We are all addicted to that.
Yes, exactly.
Let's replace that addiction with something else that's more that's going to be better for you, healthier for you, and get you through those things. So I went to our correctional director at the time, and I was like, hey, are you guys doing something like this at the prison? And he's like, I don't think so, but I think it's a really good idea, because he had started this solid program that I don't know if Casey mentioned, I don't think he mentioned it, but it's kind of more of a self-directed program in the prison. And he's like, I don't know, I'll check it out. And I said, well, I'm going to start a bill file. I'm going to open a bill file and see if there's any barriers that we need to remove, like through our health and human services. Like, do we need to make sure they have a physical? Do we need to, like, what kinds of things could there be that were barriers? And as I got talking with more people through the process, we realized that there wasn't any barriers. And they honestly don't like it when you say you're opening a bill file dealing with the prison. Like, they're like, uh-oh, what's going on? What are they going to make us do? And so it's weird. It's a weird thing for me, being a new legislator, realizing that I can push forward some really good things merely just by saying, hey, I really want to support this. And so why not use that power for good like this, you know?
Katy, real quick, how much do you have to run for an Ironman? Like, what's the longest distance that you have to run?
In an Ironman, it's a marathon. Yeah.
It's a marathon, right?
Yeah. It's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 on the bike, and then a marathon at the end.
Wow.
Unless you get into the Ultraman distances where they do like 100-mile and like 1,000-mile, like multi-day. So
Have you ever wanted to do that?
So here's the thing is I've always thought about it. And people have asked me, why not an Ironman? Why not do this? Honestly, I can't afford all the gear. Like it gets so expensive.
It is an expensive sport for sure. It's an expensive sport.
And like running's expensive already, but at least I just need some shoes and then, I can go out and do it. Right. But the bike gets kind of crazy. It's a lot of time investment. Maybe at some point, if I go to Hawaii and run the Ironman out there, I have to qualify for that one though. But that's where like the big race is there in Hawaii. Katy, back kind of where we were talking about, do you remember that exact moment that you realized that this program, Fit From Within, was more than just a program and it was, about dignity and healing?
Yeah. So it's funny when I brought that to the corrections director, and he didn't really know if they were doing anything. And so I know they had a meeting that I couldn't make it to. And then a couple months later, they invited me to one of the groups with Casey and some of the people from each of the buildings that had been like, I think they made directors of each building trying to get people to sign up. Cause they were, I think maybe because I was pushing it, they were like, okay, maybe we will have more of everybody coming together that Casey first wanted to do. And I had no idea that they even had the running program before that until that meeting. And as we were talking and these people were like, yeah, we got like 100 people to sign up in our building and we got 50 in our building. And I could see that they were getting excited about it. And I was like, oh, this is great. You guys are running with this. No pun intended, but they were already kind of doing it. And a couple of the gals that are like, their names are Annie and Ellie, the mental health counselor and then the activities coordinator and stuff for the correctional facility. They kind of had helped run with it and kind of set up a schedule and had a whole thing. And I was like, oh, you guys are doing this. So after the session, I was like, I'm going to come to your next run, And they were like, wow, you're coming. Why would a legislator care to come? And I'm like, well, because I believe in this. I want this to keep happening. And we know that if I go and show up, then they're like, okay, we'll make it happen. Because again, it's that influence that you can have as a legislator for good things like this. And so I just started coming to the progressive runs. Me and my running friend, Wendy, I brought her down with me. I'm like, hey, do you want to come? She's like, I guess I've never been to the prison. I don't know.
Yeah. Did you run to?
Let me pause, Katy. Let me tell that.
Yeah. Let's hear your side of the story.
Yeah. Well, so when Katy got interested, so for that first year to the running club, I was a very inconvenient person in my building, right? The security officers were always very supportive and they're great, but they had to unlock 2 doors to let us out to the track. And it was never convenient, right? And when it became winter, it was cold. And in the summer, there were mosquitoes. So I was a pain. I was a pain in the butt. I knew I was a pain in the butt. Every time I would be like, guys, I'm sorry. It is that time. We need to go do our running club thing, right? But I'm sorry. And I know. And they would. And I could tell after the end of that first year, a lot of them were just like, oh, are you good, Casey? We did your stupid thing. And now, okay, it's good, right? You've done it for a year, And when there's only 2 of us left. And then he got paroled. So it was just me, right? I was like,
and then there was one.
So then December happens, right? And I'm just out running by myself. There's some other guys that they had been running all year, and there's a couple of really great stories I'd love to talk about, but they weren't able to do quite the marathon distance. So they were still trying to hit their 1,000 miles. And then all of a sudden, some of the very high ranking people at the prison were like, who is Casey Vanderhoef? And I was like, oh man, I must be in trouble. Like, what does this guy want me? I'm like, I'm Casey Vanderhoef.
You're not supposed to bring attention
like,
to yourself.
What is going on with this running thing? Yeah. He's like, what is your running thing? I'm like, well, it's the Fit From Within running club, you know? And he's like, what are you doing? Because there are some legislators that they're supposed to give you this book, and they gave me a book called Spark. And it really, I don't know if I'm saying it changed my life it helped me understand what I was feeling. This book called Spark, it was a book that was written about the brain's cognitive process when you run and the reward system inside the brain for the mental health benefits of running. And it talked a lot about BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factors. Talked a lot about neurogenesis in your hippocampus, about what happens if you exercise for longer than 30 minutes at a heart rate higher than 70% of your maximum heart rate. And it talked about the hormones. Yeah, well, the hormones, which is basically it's a low-dose antidepressant. And so as I was reading this book, I looked back. At this point, it'd been 3 years in my running every single day in prison, and I was like, that's exactly what I've been experiencing. You know, that is why, again, in supplement with all of the mental health work I'd done, I'd gone back to Slick and gotten my another business degree. You know, I'd done a bunch of church stuff, so I felt like I was in a good place with God. But that is ultimately my brain that I just knew to be broken from all the years of addiction, right? From all the things, like I was feeling whole. And as I read that book, I was like, man, this is exactly it. And so now they're coming to me saying, hey, look, the legislature's coming down on us saying they want everybody running. And I was like, yeah, heck yeah. I've been saying that this whole time.
Me too.
But there are two big obstacles. Yeah, there are two really big obstacles. Number one, in prisons, there is a gang element, and the violence that can be that can happen quickly between rival gangs is a security risk. And the second one is that, you know, there's just, when you run, the great thing about running is it doesn't take much, right? You just need shoes and a space, and you can go run. So it doesn't take a ton of funding to have a running program. And it brings all comers, right? So you have young people, old people, every race, every, you know, whatever, wheelchair, you know, and so they were concerned about different, like medical needs of different demographics. So I laid out what I had, and they were like, yeah, we got to have something because we're starting to get, you know, the legislature wants us to run. And now to me, that sounded very foreign. And I kind of looked at them like, what do you mean the legislature wants us to run? I mean, I agree, but I've never seen a state legislator during my time in prison. Not to say that they haven't been there. I just haven't crossed paths with any of them. And so, is this like a legislative session thing? Because I know in Utah that only happens for like 6 weeks. And they were like, no, dude, you're supposed to go to this meeting. And, you know, and so it was great. So like immediately the thing I grinded for to develop for a year was just launch prison wide. But to keep things safe, they were only letting us do our events at each individual unit. So when Katy came, my very first impression of Katy was that, so we started having meetings with representatives from each building. So it has to be coordinated. If it is not run efficiently, people will not come back. We got to have a plan, and you got to make sure it's organized. You got to get names. You know, we want to make it a race-like environment with stickers and everything. And so I was kind of coaching up these guys on how to do their events in their individual buildings. And then Katy comes in her scrubs. So like, I can't tell you like what that spoke to us. It was like, oh, like she's literally making time in her busy day, right? She just has time to run down to the prison real quick to be involved in this meeting. It's not part of bringing cameras in. It's not part of, hey, look at me doing this legislative function of my job. It was just this woman showing up for us. And she came into a room that had active gang members, right? I'm sure Katy can probably tell you too many tattoos to count. And every single person just felt so seen and so loved in that moment because we just hadn't experienced it like that. And then my second experience is Katy showing up to our first race in running clothes. And I kind of looked at her like, what do you think you're about to do? You know, she's like, I'm going to run. Yeah, it's so funny too, because as soon as she said that, you could hear all the guards behind her whispering, like, is she allowed to do that? Are we supposed to let her? Is that okay? Do I have to run with her? Like, you know, all these things were happening all at once, and it was freaking awesome. It was so great. All right, go ahead, Katy.
Katy, were you afraid at all? Like,
yeah, I mean, I kind of figured we've got guards everywhere, right? And I kind of figured these people want this program to succeed, right? And so it couldn't be that bad, right? I honestly, I mean, if I'm telling the truth though, sure, I was a little bit nervous. I was
Right.
like, what do I do? What do I say? I'm just going to be me. That's all I know how to do is just be me. And so I was like, well, I'll just run a few laps with them and see where it goes. And so I just start having conversations with people. I don't think I have never once asked any of them why they were there though. Like,
Yeah.
It like,
It was like being on a run, like somewhere at a formal race, right? Like, hey, how's
Yeah.
it going? How long you
like,
been running?
hey,
Whatever.
how's it going?
Yeah.
Not what, hey, what'd you do to get here? Like, that's,
Right.
you know, I just tried to see them as humans that,
Yeah.
as people that, you know, yeah, they're here. They've done something not great. They're paying for it, but why don't we want people to have the skills to not get back there? Most of these people are getting out eventually.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
do we want them coming back into society with skills that they can use to not come back to the prison? Or do we just still do the same things we've been doing that are not working?
No, that's
So-
that's
That's
beautiful.
So as we
amazing.
got the
Yeah, she
program
dedicated
started,
her
our
time.
first 3 events. Yeah, it is.
ahead.
Well, so our first 3 events we were having to do separately in each building. So Katy would come on these event days, and she would go to all of the 5Ks, right? She'd go to the Green Building 5K, and then the Bear 2 5K, and then all these kind of places. And so after like 3 months, I'm like, look, this isn't okay. We've got a great start, but the vision is to have run, you know, and we did something that's very smart. Is we partnered with our Health and Human Service team. And we decided that year to do a mental health study to see what impact running would have on the incarcerated population. Would it decrease the instances of violence? How were they self-reporting they felt mentally before and after these races? So we had our therapists come in and start conducting surveys and collecting data that we could then measure against the rest of the prison. And so we started having very favorable results that we could show. Like, look, the guys that are running, here's our percentage of violent incidences versus the regular prison population. Here's their levels of depression, self-reported depression, anxiety, versus the rest of the prison. And so once Katy came on board and she brought a ton of juice with her, and a ton of support, that again, and everyone in the prison was always very well-meaning. I feel like this just really focused it on this one activity that again cost nothing, required no funding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we started to see it now. So now we're doing it prison wide. You know, we've got hundreds of people involved. Like when it comes to walking the prison yard, I am not a popular fellow, right? Like I'm just a guy that goes to all the programming classes. I'm old, right? But now like people are starting to like, hey, Casey, when's the next race? And it was like, yeah, it's 2 Thursdays. It's in 2 Thursdays, you know. But there was a fun little energy that was starting. And I started noticing guys from different populations participating. So we got some active game members are starting to participate. They were starting to come to our meetings, and their relationships with the guards were starting to change, and the incidences of violence were going down. So I thought, man, we've got to find a way to bring everybody together like we do in the world. And so our goal was, by the time we did our 10-mile run, that we could bring every single person in the prison that was part of the program that had been running to run on the same track at the same time. And that was a very big deal for the prison because it included a lot of, like, we had to have SWAT there. Like we had to, I mean, we had to go through a massive, like, physical
logistically, I'm
search,
sure it was crazy.
strip search just to get in. Yeah. And so, we reached out to some of the guys that know some of the guys, and we're like, look, we cannot have any of the funny stuff, man. We got to just be there to run and show the prison that we can meet as humans and do something healthy. Like, you know, we're all meeting there as dads to try to get ourselves in a better position to be there for our grandkids, you know? And so we really approached it from that standpoint. We did not matter what gang you're from. We didn't matter what your charge was. We didn't matter, you know, what your disciplinary record was. We just wanted you to come and do something healthy, with us. And so we can be supportive. So we had our 10-mile run. So Katy was there with Wendy. She was running with the guys. It was awesome. And all these guys would be like, hey, who is that? Who are those 2 ladies? I'm like, listen, man, that's a state legislator. Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, wow. Everybody knows she's running with us, you know? And again, it's just, we would have volunteers come in and say, there are so many people out here cheering for you guys to come back. They just want to see you come back the right way. And I would always believe those volunteers. When you're incarcerated, you don't see it. And so when you have hard days, when you have Christmas, when you have birthdays, you don't feel it, right? You're like, yeah, okay, that sounds good, right? That sounds nice. But like when Katy and Wendy started showing up, like guys felt it, and then they would start to tell a story. It's funny too, because the story would like always change, like get bigger and bigger and bigger. So like by the time it made it back to me, I'm like, wait, what? Who came? Yeah, the governor was going to show up, but then just his wife did.
The vice president of the United States was here.
Yeah. No, I mean, so that's how we get. So our first 6 months was really successful. I would like to tell a story really quick, if I could, about a guy named Isaac Pickett. When I very first started, Isaac was young. He was 22 years old. And he had Hodgkin's lymphoma. He and I were taking a bunch of classes together, and I've done a lot of really like physically tough things in my life. Isaac had not, and I watched Isaac go through chemotherapy in prison and not miss a single life skill class that he was attending. Like vomiting, sick, losing weight, lost his hair, lost his eyebrows, and I watched him show up for class. And so when I started my running club, I said, Isaac, why don't you, he lost 50 pounds with the chemo. I'm like, why don't you start running as you recover from your cancer and see if that can't help you, stay healthy. And so he was with me on day one. He was out there in basketball, high top shoes, and his knees somehow seemed to touch when he ran. And I watched him run his first lap, and he's like, okay, all right, how was it? And I was just like, oh man, Isaac, maybe this was a bad idea. I'm like, yeah, it was all wrong, man. Like you got the wrong shoes, your feet, you're not supposed to, your knees shouldn't, how do you feel? It's like, oh, I feel terrible. It was really hard. Like, okay. But he came out and he ran every day, and he is this like really smart composer math guy. But that whole first year he ran, he wasn't in shape enough to do the half marathon or the marathon, but he got to where he could run 3 miles, which for him, again, post cancer, like awesome. I was so proud of him by the end of that first year. And then he started that year with Katy. And by the time we got to the point where we had our 10-mile run, I was running with Isaac one day, and I was looking at him, and he had gotten running shoes, and he was running on the balls of his feet, didn't have any heel strikes, and he had defined calves. I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, Isaac, you look like a runner, dude. Like, you don't look like a guy trying to run. You look like a runner. And it was just, it was incredible, because then, like, as he was putting himself back together physically and mentally, like, I could see in him, I could see the same type of changes I was experiencing at a different level. You know what I mean? But I could recognize it. I could see it.
Yeah.
And to me, like that was like that. I don't know if Isaac would have done that in any other space other than prison, right? With the right support, with the right structure. And it's great. And he's out now. And he was awesome. So we got to our 10-mile race. We got everybody together. And I would say that was probably as great as I could have envisioned it going. You know what I mean? Like Katy was there, Wendy was there, all the captains were there. They let us do it. I think that was huge. And I don't know if I could have said, like, I would have said, this is it. This is the moment. We've done it. Mountaintop moment. Congratulations, everybody. Round of applause. And what happened the 6 months after that would have been beyond anything I could have ever envisioned. So I don't know. Kate, you want to pick it up from there? What was that like from your perspective?
Yeah. What happened after that?
Yeah. No, I thought it was amazing, and Isaac was amazing, and so many people have stories. Like there was 2 people that did the marathon in wheelchairs.
Yeah.
Right. One did it himself, and then another one was pushed by runners. Like. It's amazing, and it just showed that everybody was there to work and to move and progress forward. And I don't know, I know there's things always that are happening behind the scenes before we even get there, because it is a security thing. It is of
course.
We on the outside don't know the pressures that go on the inside, right? Both with the incarcerated individuals, but also with the people that work there. because they have different things that they've seen and had to deal with. And so I've always tried to be, cognizant of the challenges that they have to work through to make something like this happen. And to do like the half marathon and some of the longer ones, it was like, no, you got to have a porta potty out there. You got to have, and the track is kind of big, I mean, I think it was like 79 times around the track was the marathon, right? So it's not huge, but it's pretty big.
It's big enough to where you have spots and you need manpower to make sure that you can have things.
Yeah. So they started having SWAT like at 4 different places around the track because they want to make sure everybody's safe. They want to make sure that there's not any switches
funny
going
business.
on or funny business. And I get that they have to do that. And so I really do appreciate the correctional facility for allowing it to happen and making, cause they don't have to, honestly.
Exactly. I was going to say, when Casey even mentioned the story of like every day unlocking the gate in the winter, in the summer, right? There's so many, points in this whole operation that, it could have died. Yeah. This whole program could have just been done. But, one person had a vision. What still blows my mind is that you guys both saw the same 26.2 to Life documentary. Right. And I wonder different networks at different times. And I wonder, where this universe, it never ceases to amaze me, especially in this running world, right? In this pushing ourselves to these limits where, we're trying to find healing, all of us, right? We're trying to find healing somewhere, some way. Yeah. But the fact that the stars lined up perfectly, that you guys both see this documentary, that you have the guards who are willing to go out of the way. Okay, I'll unlock these gates. Katy comes in and she goes and she, helps put this together. And then these guards and, the warden of the whole prison is saying, okay, fine, we'll let this happen. So many people to change so many lives for one thing is an absolutely incredible.
And it's amazing Katy did this, and most of the time, nobody cares about the forgotten.
Exactly.
Like in a jail, right? Like, yeah. And then to go out and run.
And, I was thinking, she puts herself there in a prison, right? She's around active gang members, right? And she goes, I'm going to go for this run. What I was thinking in my head, because
I said, are you crazy?
I always go through like some funny scenarios. I'm like, well, the only reason why she was okay with doing it is because she knew she could outrun everybody if she needed to.
Oh, wow. She's just in front of all of them.
She's like, try and get me. Go ahead.
Right. So, yeah. So like Katy said, we were ready to grow. Our numbers were great. We now had 6 months of data for the positive effects it was having. And, the support we had from the prison administration, like they were just so great. I kept asking for more. I was like, look, when we do the marathon, we got to do it like the perimeter of the prison. That's cool, right? And they were like, no, Casey, there's no way that's possibly feasible. Like, what if I put together a plan? They're like, yeah, there's just no way, Casey, we could possibly do it. But there were some things like, so Katy started bringing more legislators. So we were getting ready for a half marathon. And I was trying to tell him like, look, Katy's great and she's going to bring more legislators. And like, do you want them to see a bunch of guys whizzing on the fence? Cause we've got to have a porta potty. That's just too long. And the other thing that was hard was because we were doing it around a track, it was getting the lap counting. Like there was starting to be a lot of laps to count. Because we had 73 people at our half marathon, and they all had to run 39 laps. And so I was like, look, we got to get some more volunteers because we just need people to count laps. And so we worked with a company called My Story Matters, which taught a life skills class at the prison called Captain Your Story, which is great. And so we get to the morning of our half marathon, and number one, as we were doing these runs, one thing that was fun to witness was the way the interpersonal, like the way the guards were starting to talk with especially some of the more, I'm trying to think the right respectful way to put this. Some of the active gang members that probably did not have very many positive interactions with guards. You know what I mean? Like most of their interactions were them trying to get away with something and the guards trying to catch them. That would probably be the best way to describe that relationship. But when these guys were there working security at these runs, it was funny to watch them just cheer for the guys that they've had to put in to dry cells for behavioral problems. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like the relationship was there for bad reasons, but they were interacting in a positive way, and you could see it. Like I know these guys. I'm like, man, that's really awesome that you're spending time talking to Alex that way. It's like, well, shoot, man. He's like, the kid drives me crazy, but I just want to see him do well. You know what I mean? Like there was something there, between these security officers that really do want to help, right? And now they're in an environment where they're participating in a really positive thing. So they got a chance to kind of have those moments. So we get ready to do our half marathon, and I've been pushing to get a porta potty. I didn't realize how hard it was to get a porta potty inside of prison. Like I'd gotten the money donated, but then they're like, Casey, you can't just like buy a porta potty or rent one. You've got to have a driver that has prison clearance to drive into like, you know what I mean? Like, oh yeah,
there's
hadn't thought of that. That makes sense. I don't know. How do you guys do it? Yeah. And so Casey, I've been working on that for so long, and it's
Yeah, there's just too much good to talk about this, and I hope that, I really hope that maybe we can have a second opportunity to maybe do a part 2 of this if you guys are willing, because I just want to explore so much more, and I want to be mindful of everybody's time, and I think, I'm so grateful like for you guys. We have to, if you guys are up for it, we have to do a part 2 of this. If I can get that, okay, that would be so awesome. To really explore this a little bit more. But I want to say thank you, Katy. Katy, what you did, just like pushing through that and helping,
Amazing.
Incarcerated individuals feel seen. I think that is like such a big thing that you did. And even when I was like in active addiction and came through sobriety, like there's something about that. Feeling seen is huge, and it goes a long way, and going to bat for a lot of people out there because you knew what it was bringing. I just want to say congratulations and bravo to you on that, and kind of setting a standard for, state representatives who actually put in a little bit more effort.
Care,
you can just tell. And whatever you're doing in your life, you got to share your secret, because you look amazing for you saying you're a grandma.
That's nuts.
This is wild. So we're gonna go ahead and follow this route.
Time to start running some Ironmans, I think.
In Hawaii. It must be the Hawaii glow, right?
Yes.
And Casey, this is just an incredible story. My 1 hour time limit is just not going to do this justice. There's so much more I want to explore with you on the growth of the mental side of things. But you sticking through, this is what I tell you often, and I hate to bring it up like this, but when addicts have something on their mind, we find a way to get it done, man.
I'm seeing that.
Okay. We find a way to get it done.
You guys turn positive.
Yeah. And, the fact that you're taking that skill set of an addict and turning it into something useful for society, bravo to you on that. And I am just super happy. Before we end this, each one of you, if there's a message that you want to, send out to anybody, either thinking about running or who's incarcerated or a state representative, please just a final thought from each of you. Katy, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me. And I really appreciate that. And I appreciate Casey and his willingness to tell his story and to be an example to so many people. It wouldn't have happened, obviously, without him pushing from the inside. It takes all of us working together. And I think, as far as like seeing people, I think we can all realize that the people inside the correctional facilities, they're our neighbors, they're our friends. They could be your kids. They could be just a bad decision can put someone in that position. And so I think it's just seeing people as human and that it could be anybody, and we want people to succeed. And so that's kind of the impetus of why I did that and why I will continue to still hopefully be able to support that program and keep it going, get it bigger. We'd like to do more things where we have classes and stuff on running and getting them the proper equipment. We have a donation coming I got a gal from the University of Utah that's going to hopefully be able to start doing some research. I know the prison has done some, informal questionnaires, but kind of do some research to say, hey, this is a program that every facility should adopt. And so hopefully as we get more and more into this, some of that research will come out and they'll hopefully publish it, and we can I don't know. I just have big dreams for all of it. And then we can get them some good running shoes, because that's like been my goal this whole year that I haven't been able to do. And I finally had a sit down with our new correctional facility director actually just last week. And I said, we need shoes. These guys need shoes. Like, if you don't want them getting injured while they're running, they need to not have the crappy shoes. So can we find a way to do it? And again, it's those security protocols that they have to. And so it's like just going to the top and saying, hey, how can we make this happen? Things happen like that. And so anyway, we could maybe have a follow-up. Casey and another of the inmates, the Ogden Marathon offered them a spot in the Ogden Marathon. And so we're going to run that in May, and Wendy and I are planning on running it, even though Casey will beat us to the finish line by well over an hour, I'm sure.
Nick, are you gonna?
Oh man. So in May I have a race. But man, I would love to, in the future, join you guys for maybe a run if I get our way out there in Utah. Casey, final closing thought from you?
Yeah, my final closing thought is just expressing my incredible gratitude to Katy. I know there's a lot of very well-meaning people in positions of influence, and Katy was well-doing, not just well-meaning. And she showed up for me. She showed up for the guys that I care about, and she showed up for their families, because there's a family connected to every single one of these men. And when we restore these men, we restore them to their family, and we help their family become whole too. And so I just have so much love in my heart for her. I will run and knock on doors for whoever you need me to. When you're ready to run for re-election, you can count on me, just because I felt so seen. I got invited to go back to the prison as a civilian for the marathon because I'd been paroled. And I get just, the first thing Katy did was give me a hug. And it just made me feel so human, so accepted. And I'm really grateful for her and the role she's played in my life. So thank you, Katy.
Awesome.
Okay,
well, you guys stick around for 1 second while I close the show out, and I'm going to just talk with you for 1 more minute afterwards, but thank you guys again. That's another episode.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks,
yes. Before we do, is there any way they can find you to reach out, for the donations? I will link everything in the bio. Well, you know what? In the future, when we have the next episode, we'll get things going and we'll do that. And, I know that we'll find a way. I'll list some things in the show notes if they need to reach out, or any place that they can, do anything like that. Okay. But that's another episode of the Ostrich Running Podcast.
Wow. Good part 1.
Man, amazing. We have to do it again. I want to thank everybody who comes in and listens to the show week after week, your messages of support. I think it's stories like this that really help drive the community together. And show the power of running. That's how we get rid of the juice. Stop juicing these things, man. There's healing in running. Even though he does not want us to run, we will get him to run because he will know what he can do.
This story sold it.
It was great.
Right.
But that's another episode of the Ostrich Running Podcast. We will see you guys next week. Cue that outro music.
Who says you need to fly to reach the top? Keep beating your block till your feet are hot. Get your head out the sand. Join the flock. It's okay to run scared. We enjoy it a lot. I'm an odd kid, like an ostrich. I got a pod, kids. Here's a topic. Blaze your own trail. Don't be cautious. 2 birds, 1 stone's how I rock it. Can't make an omelet without breaking a shell. But the say grew up, now I'm raising hell. Haters gonna hate, yeah, they praying you fail. So put in the work, whether pavement or trail. The grades fell down, but they got to the feet. Run your own race, put this pod on repeat. Shake your tail feather, keep nodding your beaks. Ostrich gang, or you're not my peeps. Who says you need to fly to reach the top?